Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Let us continue with the second station of our journey in understanding the Holy Quran from a macroscopic structural perspective. Surat al-Baqareh, the longest chapter of the Holy Quran. This chapter can be divided to 4 parts with a conclusion at the end. The central aim of this chapter is to introduce Islam as the ultimate path of salvation for humanity and for human beings as individuals. If we read the first half of the Surah Al-Baqarah structurally, we see that the central concern is not the law and is not history alone, but rather it's about how does divine guidance lead to the formation of a believing community, a religious community, and how do different people or different types of people respond to the guidance. The first part of the chapter can be divided into 3 discourses. The first one is about human and the response to having faith in Islam, in which 3 categories are explained. Then it's the invitation to Islam, and then the reasons behind disbelief. In the first discourse, humanity is classified into 3 groups, as mentioned earlier. And when it comes to the response to Islam, we have the mu'mineen, the believers, we have the disbelievers who reject, and you have the hypocrites who appear to accept guidance, but inwardly they resist it and plot against it. So as you can see, structurally, this is not just a description. It provides us with foundation of a social and a spiritual map. The Quran is teaching us that every community will contain these 3 responses to truth. Now, after establishing these human types, the discourse shifts from description to invitation. Humanity is called to worship the one Lord, to recognize the signs of God in creation, and to acknowledge that this Quran is divine guidance. But the chapter does not stop at the invitation. It then exposes the deeper roots of rejection, the psychological, the moral, and the spiritual causes of disbelief and arrogance and resistance to truth. So this is the first part. The first part, as we said, had 3 different discourses. Now the chapter moves to the second part, in which is about inviting the opposition to Islam. So at the time of the Prophet, now the message of the Islam is being promoted to those who oppose it or reject it. So this part has 5 discourses. It begins to introduce the idea that guidance is not just an individual act or an individual mental exercise, but it is communal with real examples and effects in the external world. And God is not only guiding hearts, He's forming people, He's forming a moral society. There are laws and there are ethics. And a community can be shaped by revelation. The theme of this part is explained through presenting probably the first documented example of a religious community known as the Bani Israel. So in the first discourse, the duties of Bani Israel are explained in detail with respect to Islam. And 4 duties are outlined: being committed to the divine covenant, believing in the book and the prophet, in acting upon the Islamic law, and finally 3 advices to Bani Israel to perform their duties according to their book. Then it moves to the second discourse within the second part of this chapter, providing 8 examples why Yahud rejected the truth in their history. For example, the test after fleeing from Pharaoh, worshipping the golden calf, asking to see God, being ungrateful to the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, belittling the command of Allah upon entering the promised land, corruption after being blessed with so many ni'mah, asking for more despite being freed from slavery, turning away from divine covenant after so many blessings and miracles, and finally stubbornness and resistance to leave and impact the divine order. Then it moved to the third discourse. In the third discourse, it explains the reasons why the Yahud at the time of the Prophet rejected his message. Here, it provides us with 6 reasons: distorting the book of God, hiding the truth of the Prophet of Islam, not paying attention to their own divine book, the Torah, believing that Yahud won't be punished, not committing to divine covenant, and the historical trend and habit of opposing prophets. In the fourth discourse, the Qur'an provides responses to 13 excuses raised by the Jews against Islam at the time of the Prophet. For example, we only believe in what has been revealed to Bani Israel. Or why did Muslims change their Qibla? In the final discourse of the second part, the duties of the Muslims are outlined when it comes towards the opposition. For the believers, they need to have patience in difficulties and challenges. At the same time, they need to live and embody the religious symbols and rituals. But Quran doesn't stop there. It provides advice for the opposition as well, for the enemies, inviting them not to hide the truth, and also asking them it's not too late for repentance. As you can see, the stories, arguments, warnings, and promises are not just scattered randomly. They are woven together to answer one central question: who will truly carry divine guidance? And what qualities must that community, that religious community, embody? Structurally, the first half of Surah Al-Baqareh, as we discussed in its part 1 and its part 2, is laying foundations of belief, foundations of responsibility, and foundations of a guided society. Because below law comes identity, and before law comes identity, and before rules come into the hearts, and before a sacred community is built, the Quran teaches us how people truly respond to the truth. Inshallah, we will continue with the next episode to finish this beautiful long chapter. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.